بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So previously we had been talking about the series of a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, describing those individuals who are going to cross the sirat, or cross the bridge that Allah Azza wa Jal will put between the people and the paradise. So the next hadith that Imam Muslim brings, قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا جعفر بن عون قال حدثنا هشام بن سعد قال حدثنا زيد بن أسلم بإسنادهما نحو حديث حفص بن ميسرة إلى آخره وقد زاد ونقص شيئا. So over here, Imam Muslim, he brings another hadith, and this is just to further support and strengthen the previous hadith and the previous change that he mentions. And he brings two separate chains that are in support, talking about those individuals, or talking about how the people will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment without any sort of distraction. قال وحدثني هارون ابن سعيد الأيلي قال حدثنا ابن وهب قال أخبرني مالك ابن أنس عن عمرو بن يحيى بن عمارة قال حدثني أبي عن أبي سعيد الخدري أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يدخل الله أهل الجنة الجنة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enter the people of paradise who are due paradise, يدخل من يشاء برحمته, and he will cause those individuals to enter due to his mercy. And this is something that we had mentioned previously and spoken about when Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam about the people who will enter paradise, and he sallallahu alayhi wasallam had told her that no one will enter paradise due to their deeds, due to their actions. And she radiallahu anha, she responded, Hatta anti ya Rasulullah, she said, even you ya Rasulullah, and he sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, yes, not even me. Everyone will enter paradise because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's infinite mercy. ويدخل أهل النار النار, and the people of hellfire will enter the hellfire. ثم يقول, and then he will say, انظروا من وجدتم في قلبه مثقال حبة من خردل من إيمان فأخرجوه. He says, and look to those individuals who you see a mustard seed amount of iman in their hearts, then remove them. فيخرجون منها حمما قد امتحشوا. So, and then there will be people who are taken out who will be burnt to the point where they look like coal. فَيُلْقَوْنَ فِي نَهْرِ الْحَيَاءِ أو الْحَيَاء. So over here, one of the narrators, they're in doubt on how the term is actually used. Is it hayat with the ta or not? But this is just a difference in how it's narrated, saying that they'll be put into this river known as the river of life. فَيُنْبِتُونَ فِيهِ كَمَا تُنْبِتُ الْحِبَّةُ إِلَى جَانِبِ السَّيْلِ. It says, and that they will come out of that lava form, or come out of that coal, similar to how a plant grows on the edge of the river, like how quickly it grows. أَلَمْ تَرَوْهَا كَيْفَ تَخْرُجْ صَفْرَاءَ مُلْتَوِيَةً. It says, do you not see how it comes out from that silt, or from that dirt, a yellow, like in a twisted way, meaning that it grows so quickly that it actually looks like it's spiraling upward. قال وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا عفان قال حدثنا وهيب تحويل الإسناد وحدثني حجاج بن شاعر قال حدثنا عمرو بن عون قال أخبرنا خالد كلاهما عن عمرو بن يحيى بهذا الإسناد وقال فيلقون في نهر يقال الحياء. So over here they will be thrown, or they will be put into the river that is known as the river of life. ولم يشك. And so in this, what's interesting here is that Imam Muslim brings this narration to show that this narrator did not actually doubt on whether it was hayat with the ta or without, saying that yuqal lahu al-hayat, and he said that these two narrators, they didn't doubt, and they said it was this hayat, or the river of life. وفي حديث خالد كما تنبت الغثاء في جانب السيل. So over here he says that there's a narration from Khalid where he says that it's just like ghutha. Ghutha is like the foam that's on top of on the top of a river you get like this foam, or on the top of the sea you get this foam. And he says that just like, that carries all of the nutrients, it is similar in that space that you will find that they will come out of that coal state, or come out of that rock state, similar to how a plant grows from that, I'm sorry? The qutha. So the Prophet ﷺ, he uses, there's another hadith, he says that there will come a time where the other nations will prey upon you like the lions come and they prey upon its prey. And he said, "Will we be few at that time, Ya Rasulullah?" He said, "No. You'll be like Wutha. You'll be like Wutha as-Sayl, and you will be like the foam of the sea." Meaning that like there's nowhere you look in the ocean except that you see it. Meaning that your numbers will have no effect on the fact that other nations are preying upon you and taking advantage of you. But I don't know if the Prophet ﷺ uses this example in other places or uses this metaphor in other places. It might be, yeah. In what is the idea? The idea behind this is like you have these people who are completely burnt, right? They look like coal or they look like lava, as came in some narrations, and then all of a sudden they're put in this river, and then they come out of the river. You know what I mean? Like so they're dunked in this river, and then they come out of this river like completely refreshed and completely renewed. And that's the only thing that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was just giving an example of like how, you know, how could something that looks like this or how could a person so burnt come out so quickly? So he's giving the examples like, okay, well the seed, it doesn't look like the end plant. But what happens when you put that seed in a healthy place? Right? It sprouts very quickly. وفي حديث وهيب, and Wahib he adds in his narration كَنَا تنبت الهبة في هميئة أو حميلة السيل. So he's over here in the narration of Wahib, he says just like a seed grows in silt, right? And so silt, like we said, that's what settles at the bottom of the river, and that's what comes up, right? And that's what actually fertilizes the land. Oh, hamila say. No, hamila is like whatever floats on top of the water. Yeah. The hadith is in this, in my version, it is 305. So here, let me tell you the bab. It's going to be either bab 81 or 82. إثبات الشفاعة وإخراج الموحدين من النار. All right. So that's usually easier to find than the hadith number. قال وحدثني نصر ابن علي الجحظمي قال حدثنا بشر يعني ابن مفضل عن أبي مسلمة عن أبي نضرة عن أبي سعيد قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أما أهل النار الذين هم أهلها. He says, as for the people of the fire who are deserving of it, فإنهم لا يموتون فيها ولا يحيون. Then they will never die, nor will they be revived. Meaning that it's not like, okay, they're going to pass the time in here and then they're going to come out in somewhere else. He says, he said that they will forever be in that, right? Which is the purpose of why he said it in this way. ولكن ناس أصابتهم النار بذنوبهم أو قال بخطاياهم فأماتهم إماتة. He says, but as for those people who are in the hellfire due to their deeds, due to their bad deeds, or due to their mistakes, there are two different narrations, then these people are severely burnt. These individuals are severely burnt, حتى إذا كانوا فحما, to the point where they actually come out like charcoal, right? They look like charcoal. أذن بالشفاعة. So, and these people are given permission for people to intercede on their behalf. فَجِيءَ بِهِمْ ضَبَائِرْ. So over here the Prophet ﷺ says that they will be brought in ضَبَائِرْ. They'll be brought in groups. Like, so large groups, vast groups of people are going to be taken out of the hellfire. And he says they'll be taken out group after group. فَبُثُّوا عَلَى أَنْهَارِ الْجَنَّةِ. And then they will be sent to the rivers of paradise. ثُمَّ قِيلَ يَا أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ أَفِيضُوا عَلَيْهِمْ. And then it will be said to the people of Jannah, pour water over them. All right, so this is a little bit different than some of the other narrations. فَيُنْبِتُونَ نَبَاتَ الْحِبَّةِ تَكُونُ فِي حَمِيلِ السَّيْلِ. And he said that they will sprout from that water, due to that water being poured over them, similar to how a plant sprouts due to the float that's on the river. فَقَالَ رَجُلٌ مِّنَ الْقَوْمِ. So a man said from them, كأن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قد كان بالبادية, is as if the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم lived in the badia, is as if he lived in the desert. And we had mentioned this before. They are just they're amazed at how precise the example that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving about something that only farmers are really familiar with. And for those of you that have ever been to Mecca, one of the things that Meccans are not known for is farming. it's very mountainous, right? So there wasn't a lot. Yes. So what it means is that they will be in the hellfire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow them to die, nor will He give them another life. Meaning that He won't take them out and give them another life, somewhere else. That they'll be there forever. That's all that means. قال وحدثنا محمد بن المثنى وابن بشار قال حدثنا محمد بن جعفر قال حدثنا شعبة عن أبي مسلمة قال سمعت أبا نضرة عن أبي سعيد الخدري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بمثله. So he brings another chain here to fortify the previous change. إلى قوله في حميل السيل, and he says that it's the same hadith up to the statement, when the whatever floats on the river or the overflow or whatever the flood water. وَلَمْ يَذْكُرْ مَا بَعْدَهُ, and he says that the hadith for his narration stops there. So there are a few issues that Imam Nawawi brings, which I think are important. Number one, حكم الشفاعة وأدلتها. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَوْمَئِذٍ لَا تَنْفَعُ الشَّفَاعَةُ إِلَّا مَنْ أَذِنَ لَهُ الرَّحْمَنُ وَرَضِيَ لَهُ قَوْلًا, that on that day there will be no intercession except for those who Rahman wills, who the most merciful wills and is pleased with them. So over here, I think we had mentioned this and we had talked about this before. What is the purpose of the Shafa'a system? Like, what is the purpose of even having this intercession? And we had said that the purpose of this is because this is basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honoring the person who's doing the intercession. And the first and the greatest intercession is from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He has given, and we'll get to some of the hadith that actually talk about his shafa and talk about his intercession. And I think a lot of the benefits and the fawaid that Imam Nawawi brings, they're actually really beautiful. They're really nice. So over here, why is this idea so important? وَلَا يَشْفَعُونَ إِلَّا لِمَنْ أَرِدْ that and that they will not intercede except for those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. And there are many examples from this, right? And he says here, وَأَجْمَعَ السَّلَفُ الْخَلَفُ مَنْ بَعْدَهُمْ مِنْ أَهْلِ السُنَّةِ عَلَيْهَا وَمَنَعَتِ الْخَوَارِجِ وَبَعْضِ الْمُعْتَزِلَةِ مِنْهَا. So he's saying here that there are the different sects of the Muslims, that some of them actually deny this shafa' system. They deny the fact that this shafa' needs that will this happen and this intercession does happen. وتعلقوا بمذاهبهم في تقليد المذنبين في النار. And why is that? Yes, تفضل. Sure, right? So they'll put like what? You have to make tawbah. Okay. Gosh. Yeah. So what happens is that you have this discussion around how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala view sin? Is an individual sin enough to remove a person from a state of belief or not? Right, depends on who you ask, number one, right? But if you ask someone from Ahl Sunnah, they'll say no. So the thing is, even from Ahl Sunnah, I would say like the most lenient of them are like the Murjit fuqaha, right? And they'll say that the effect of sin on the belief is minimal, right? It doesn't have much of an effect, because iman in and of itself is something that stems from the heart, and it can be greater or less. So this idea that they don't believe it can increase or decrease, I don't. That's not true, right? Because they understood and they recognized the level of iman of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu versus other companions. But how is iman, right? Like, so is iman just this internal faith that a person has, that it does increase and decrease with the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but is that element actually separate from our actions, right? So that's one extreme in how to deal with that. Ahl Sunnah, they say that no, iman is, yes, that is definitely a part of iman, but if I do good deeds, what ideally should happen to my iman? It should increase, right? And if I do bad deeds, it's going to decrease. Now, what the Khawarij and Mu'tazila, they're a little bit different, but we'll deal with the Khawarij first. The Khawarij, they say that the iman is one one entity, it's one unit. And the moment that it's corrupted with sin, a person, what happens to the person's iman? It's done. So they don't believe iman can actually be parsed out, right? Versus Ahl Sunnah, they believe iman can be parsed out, and certain elements and levels of iman can be affected. The Khawarij, they say no. The iman is a whole, and either you have it as a whole, or you don't have it at all. Sure. So they'll be like, yeah, the answer will be like, yeah, they're all deserving of punishment, and the degree, because there are degrees of punishment, because there is degree to sin. But every single person who falls into that will be in that state, is now a sinner, and they will forever be in the hellfire. They don't believe this, so they actually deny this whole shafaat system. Yeah, it's like, no, this once a person enters the hellfire, they're forever in the hellfire. Huh? Yeah. Once a person's in the hellfire, and they're in the hellfire. And not just that. So the Mu'tazila, they're a little bit different, because they'll be like, okay, well, this person is actually, now that he sinned, he's between two levels, right? He's manzila bayna manzilatain. He's not a believer, and he's not a disbeliever. It's like a purgatory type thing. But again, this is very antithetical to what mainstream Sunnis believe. And the problem with that is, like, they also believe that, okay, yeah, he's between these two levels, but in the akhirah, in the next world, what's going to happen to him? He no, he's mukhallad fi nar. So the end result, the end result is the same. Yeah. So what is the difference between them, and how they deal with other Muslims in this world? So the Khawarij, if they see someone to have sinned, and one of those sins is be like, oh, he's not ruling by what Allah revealed. How is he going to view that ruler? Yeah. No, they're just gonna be like, oh, he's not a Muslim, right? So, yeah. And subhanallah, what's amazing about the Khawarij is, like, you have even in the Muslim world today, it's like, yes, there are a lot of atrocities and things that are happening at the hands of non-Muslims, but a majority of the atrocities are happening at the hands of other Muslims. So how is that justified? How do they justify it? By saying the other group is not Muslim. And how do they claim that? It's like, oh, well, they're not implementing the Sharia, and anybody who does not implement the Sharia is now non-Muslim. And if you're not Muslim, guess what? Your blood is halal, and I'm obligated to fight you. Some people take it a step further, subhanallah. So it doesn't stop there. It's not bad enough that you're kafir, right? So you're kafir. Okay, what do you say about them? Well, they're Muslim. Then you're kafir too. So they have this, like, chain type of kufr. And it's amazing how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how does he tell us to deal with the Khawarij? He says they're actually the dogs of the hellfire, and you should fight them wherever you find them. And why is that? Because these are the extremist groups that actually cause the most harm to the Muslims. And even from the earliest Muslims, the earliest ones that caused the most problem for the Muslims were from the Khawarij. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. So during the time of Umar kept things pretty tight. Like, he ran a really tight ship, radiallahu anh. So you didn't see a lot of their expression coming out, and because he had very little tolerance for it. Uthman radiallahu anh, he was more lenient. He had more tolerance for a lot of those expressions. And what happened? He was actually eventually killed by their hands, right? So you had two groups actually come out during the time of Uthman, being more brazen, being more open, with their beliefs and where they stood, and that one of them was the Khawarij, the second was the Shia. So these two groups, actually, they're the ones who they were allowed a platform. I won't say they were given a platform, but they were allowed a platform. And unfortunately, it led to his assassination, and then even his successor, Ali radiallahu anh, he was assassinated. Allah understand. Nation, yeah. That's like more Khariji stuff, man. Because we had mentioned, yeah, yeah, of course, no, 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 because the reality is, I'm saying, حتى عندنا يا أخي. So the thing is, I will say that when it comes to like the bab tariq as-salah, a lot of the fiqh books, they don't, I don't think it's dealt with in a very good academic way in general. And not to say that there aren't, some very good healthy discussions around it and what that actually means and entails, but I would say in general that the dealing of tariq salah is that because you have certain things like, okay, illa idha istatab, what I mean, like, he has to be brought to a judge and made tawbah. Like, what does that practically look like? It's like, oh, Usman doesn't pray. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to take him to the police, right? So I take him to the police. He stands in front of the Muslim judge, and the judge is like, okay, hey, listen, you need to pray. Usman's like, okay, fine, I'll pray. And then what? You can't. It's not like you're going to have like a follow up or like, what I mean. And the thing is, like, even in Islam, this idea of like a religious police force, it doesn't exist. I think somebody's playing with the mic, but like, there's no religious police force that's going to come and make sure that people aren't drinking alcohol or people that aren't gambling. There is a lot of agency within an Islamic system and an Islamic structure that many times like we overlook. It's not invasive, right? It's not in the sense that come and like spy on people. Even there's actually prohibition against that, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Wala tajassasu." Yeah, I'm sorry. So that this is very different, right? So when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says don't spy, He says don't spy against each other. And there reasonable situations where you can, yeah, absolutely, right? Like, so if people are dealing drugs, it's not like, oh, I don't want to investigate where these drugs are coming from, or if like there's a suspected brothel, it doesn't mean that you don't go in, you don't investigate those things. Um, but at the end of the day, and I don't mean by invasive in the sense that there's not a voluntary invasiveness, like where people are going knocking on every single door. You can report, right? And I don't see an issue with that. Just like you would in any society, be like, hey, listen, there's something weird going on at my neighbor's house. Um, and then you go and investigate and be like, okay, no, there's illegal gambling that's happening here. People are making alcohol or whatever the case might be. But it's not going to be like the police are knocking on every single door. This idea of like a military police state. It's not something that's practical or sustainable, and it hasn't worked historically. And I don't think it's something that is going to work. Can you see? Is somebody playing with the mic? Can you please check? Jazakallah khair. Um, but yeah, what were we talking? Oh yeah, the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila. So yeah, the Khawarij. This is where you always find the extremist groups coming from, and like a lot of this, like the Bab Takfir. This is a big issue. This is a big problem. You have a lot of people who will take all of these hadith that are like shadid al-wa'id, right? So, for example, the Prophet ﷺ said that لا يزني زاني وهو مؤمن, right? Oh, لا يزني زاني حين يزني وهو مؤمن. Like there's not a person who is committing zina while he's committing zina, except that the state of iman is removed from him. It's like, okay, well, does that mean he's not? You know what I mean? Like, do you deal with him as a non-Muslim now? That's not the case. Or the Prophet ﷺ, where he said that the one who visits a kahin, right, who visits a soothsayer, then his prayer is not accepted for 40 days, right? You have a lot of hadith that are indicative and very strongly worded from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But are those hadith actually meant to be enforced in that way, in that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually said it, right? Is it a literal? Yeah, no. Okay, that's why scholarship's needed, right? So that you're actually able to investigate some of these reports and be like, okay, well, over here, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he's speaking, is he speaking in order to exaggerate the danger of what something can fall into, or does it mean that I have to take this literally? And another very famous hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if somebody passes in front of you, then stop him, and if he continues, then fight him. Huh? While you're praying, yeah. Yeah, this is the wording of the hadith, right? So the question, but I'm saying, and then Hanabila, it's like, no, you don't do that. You have to do the salah. After you finish fighting, after you not. and then make it up. No, I mean, so other hadith, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ahlan, assalamu alaikum." Totally said, yes. Ask Ahmed Hassan or message them, and maybe they can turn it off in the thing. Yeah, خلاص. I only give the class. I don't know how to. I don't know how to separate the sound. You're forced to seek knowledge. Allah Mustaan. So even the hadith that where he sallallahu alaihi wasallam he talks about, and we had mentioned this before, right? There's a series of a hadith in Abu Dawud where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he said line up, mankib and madkib, right? Ka'b and ka'b, right? Katif and katif. So he says line up, from your ankle to ankle, shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee. And another hadith you go down, it says in line up neck to neck. These we have to understand that there are many hadith here that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he said something he was speaking to people. And if you have a hadith like in Musannaf Ibn Abi Shayba, Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, he said, رَأَيْتُ أَحَدُنَا يَلْسِقْ كَعْبَهُ بِالْكَعْبِ مَا جنبه. He said that I saw some of the companions where they were actually touching feet. So meaning that if some of them are, then that means some of them aren't. So there's an understanding that they took away from those ahadith, where when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would tell them something, how would they implement it? How would they act on these things? Why is it that you have a difference of opinion? Even the way that we have the different madhab, like why do they pray in the way that they do? Like why is it so different? Like the basic fundamental structure of the salah is the same, right? Nobody says that there's no ruku or there's no sujood or there's no jalsa between the two of them or there's no qiyam. Right? These all elements that are shared between them. It's like, okay, but how come over here there's qabd and over here there's sadal? Why is it that you tie your hands in this madhab and you leave your hands in that one? So it's important to it helps us gauge on how when we're dealing with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that there are different ways to engage with it. And if you come in and you just take a superficial understanding from them, you're not actually going to benefit from the prophetic model. You're not going to benefit from what he ﷺ said. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So I think there are a number of reasons. Like the most famous hadith on the subject is from Wa'il ibn Hujr, right? Wa'il ibn Hujr, he came in front of the companions, he prayed in front of them, and he says, هَكَذَا رَأَيْتُ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي, like I saw the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم praying in this way. So if you have a hadith where you have different companions leading and praying in different ways, there are different understandings that we can take away from that. One of those understandings is that, okay, a possibility that he صلى الله عليه وسلم prayed in different ways. That's one possibility, right? The other possibility is sometimes the companion who's leading and he's showing other people how to pray, he's saying this is what a minimal prayer looks like. And all of these other things, like for example, even in the Hanbali method, if I stand and I pray like this, right, and I just go down and that's fine, right? It's all of these things are considered sunnah. They're not, and why would I do that? Maybe I prayed in that way to show people that okay, hey, even if you pray like this is a completely valid prayer. Doing all those other things, it's in the madhab, it's important, right? You should do those things or recommend it, etc., etc. But the question is like, all right, what is the minimum what are the minimum movements a person has to do in order for their salah to be considered quote unquote salah? No, there's policing in the sense that you have situations where a man prayed 3 times and he can't. And then the Prophet he says, "Irja, فإنك ما تصلي أو لم تصلي," like go back and pray because you haven't prayed. And he said, "Ya Rasulullah, this is how I know how to pray. Like I don't know what else to do." And you have situations where he was like, "You're praying too quickly. Like you're going too fast. You have to give every position its haqq." There's other situations where people would come to him and he'd be like, "Ya Rasulullah, what mistake did I make?" He's like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And he looked down, he saw a dry spot, like he completely missed in wudu. So there are situations like that, but it's not like he would go and pray and he would he would have a stick, like you need to fix this, you need to do that. It's like people are going like this, like no, you got to put your hands higher. Like you don't have that. Like that kind of policing. It didn't happen, and if it did, the only strictness that you find from him sallallahu alaihi wasallam is like when he was teaching them like Dua Ibrahimiyya. He's like Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, right? The companions, they would actually point out and they say that he taught us the Dua Ibrahimiyya the same way that he would teach us Quran. right? Like to show that he was giving importance behind it. Well, like I said, this idea of like policing and sternness and strictness, you don't see that from him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He very much led with respect, and you didn't find that he led with fear. People weren't afraid of him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That wasn't how they engaged with him. That's not how they dealt with him. That's not how they worked with him. It's like he led with respect and he commanded respect, and people, if they were afraid of anything, they were afraid of disappointing him. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Um, so, again, it's important to always understand that context is really important. There are a lot of hadith that we'll find in the hadith books. So one of the ways for me to understand a hadith is very easy. I just go to the chapter heading, say, okay, you're saying that that's what the hadith is. How did the hadith scholar use it? Right? There's clearly a context there that he took away, and there's clearly a context there that he understood. Sometimes people will be like, oh, look, this is haram, right? This is not permissible, and I'll find it in Kitab al-Adab. Right, I'll find it in the Book of Manners. I was like, well, how can something be haram if it's a manner? Right, that doesn't make sense. Like, it could be disliked, right? It could be recommended, sure, but I'm sinning because there are certain manners and etiquettes I'm not following. It's very far fetched. Very far fetched. But that's why it's important to understand and take these things. Certain books are like really good on this. So for somebody who's like, oh well, how do I read books of hadith, or how do I engage? How do I learn? It's like Riyadh al-Salihin. Just read the chapter headings. He mentioned some of the benefits from them. How do you actually benefit from this hadith? And it's like very simple, very simple, very simple, so not uncomplicated. Books like Bukhari and Muslim, it actually requires a level of certain level of academic tools that are required in order to engage with them. Like even Imam Muslim, like Imam Nawawī, he puts chapter headings and stuff like that. There's no doubt. But at the end of the day, Imam Muslim, he organized these hadith in a certain way, and that is what the benefit that these scholars took away from it. Like, what about somebody who's uninitiated? It becomes that much more dangerous because of the ability to superficially look at these hadith and misunderstand them. So it's really important, to have that background to make sure that we're engaging with these hadith in the correct way, in the proper way. تفضل يا نعمة. So we talked about that there are levels, right? So we said that at the time of the sirat, that there are some people, what's going to happen to them? They're going to fall into the hellfire, and then they'll cross. Then once the people they cross, the believers, what do? Right. So they look around and they say, like, where's this friend, or where's this family member, or where's my son, or I don't see these people. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell them to go back, right? Go back, and like whoever you recognize, then take them out from the hellfire. And then he Azza wa Jalla he starts lowering the bar so much that saying, okay, even if that person didn't do any deeds, right? If there are no good deeds that he did, as long as he believed in me, then what? Take him out of the hellfire. And he, in the other hadith that we took, that there are levels to that where he, Azza wa Jalla, he says that, okay, the malaika, the angels, they did their shafa', right? They did their intercession to take out whoever to be taken out. He said in Nabiyun, all of the prophets, they did the shafa' to take out whoever they wanted from the people who are righteous. And he said there's no one left to do shafa' now, no one left to intercede except Arhamar Rahimin. Right? So he leaves the last shafa' for himself, Azza wa Jal, where he says, now I'm going to exercise the maximum mercy. I'm going to exercise the maximum mercy on the people in the hellfire, that all they have was iman. That's it. All they had was belief. They didn't do any deeds. They didn't do anything. And we were talking about, like, this is difficult to even imagine, right? It's difficult to imagine how can you have someone who didn't do any good deeds. And wallahu alam, I believe this is more of an expression of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy than it is how to figure out, where people are in the hellfire. That conversation is not really that important. Like, is this person level 7 or is this person level 5? Like, who cares? Like, I want to avoid all of the hellfire. I don't even want to look toward the hellfire. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all Jannah. So this idea of how far does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy extend? I believe that is the purpose of why he sallallahu alayhi wasallam shared it in the way that he did. Less so than like, oh, did they do good deeds? Did they not do good deeds? But even there are other hadith, inshallah, that will come to that talk about, okay, the people who enter paradise, how the only deed that they have is, right, la ilaha illallah. So, huh? Yeah, yeah. It's just one piece of paper. That's it. Like all he has is like this sticky note, right? He just has this sticky note, and when they looked at it, when he looked at it, is all it says la ilaha illallah. So it's and again, the idea behind that is the importance of tawheed, the importance of believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and how weighty that, and how that itself is an action, right? It's an action of our heart because it's something that we are consistently and constantly believe in. قال وحدثني هارون بن سعيد الأيلي قال حدثنا ابن وهب قال أخبرني مالك أن أنا ابن أنس أن عمر بن يحيى بن عمارة قال حدثني أبي أن أبي سعيد الخدري أن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, I think we already started this hadith, but he said يدخل الله أهل الجنة الجنة يدخل من يشاء برحمته ويدخل أهل النار النار ثم يقول انظروا من وجدتم من قلبي مثقال حبة من خردل. Yeah, we already did this hadith. قال وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا عفان قال حدثنا وهيب حاوى تحويل الإسناد وحدثني حجاج بن الشاعر قال حدثنا عمرو بن عون قال أخبرنا خالد كلاهما عن عمرو بن يحيى بهذا الإسناد وقال فليلقون في نهر يقال له الحياء. لم يشك. We did this hadith as well. قال وحدثنا نصر بن علي الجحظمي قال حدثنا بشر يعني ابن المفضل عن أبي سلمة. No, I think we did this hadith too. قال وحدثنا محمد بن المثنى وابن بشار قال حدثنا محمد بن جعفر قال حدثنا شعبة عن أبي سلمة قال سمعت أبا نضر عن أبي سعيد الخدري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلى قوله في حمل السيل لم يذكره. قال حدثنا عثمان بن أبي شيبة وإسحاق بن إبراهيم الحنظلي كلاهما عن جرير قال عثمان حدثنا جرير بن منصور عن إبراهيم عن عبيدة عن عبد الله بن مسعود قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So over here, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنِّي لَعَعْلَمُ آخِرَ أَهْلِ النَّارِ خُرُوجًا مِنْهَا. So he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says here that I know the last person, or the last people to be taken out of the hellfire. وَآخِرَ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ دُخُولًا الْجَنَّةِ, and the last people to be taken, or the last person to enter the paradise. رَجُلٌ يَخْرُجُ مِنَ النَّارِ حَبْوًا. He said that there will be an individual who is taken out of the hellfire and he will be crawling. فيقول الله تبارك وتعالى اذهب فادخل الجنة. So it will be said to this person who is crawling out of the hellfire, then go and enter paradise. فيأتيها فيخيل إليه أنها ملأ. So that he will go to it and he will perceive that the paradise is full. فيرجع فيقول يا رب. So he says, my Lord, وجدتها ملأ. He says that I found it to be full. فيقول الله تبارك وتعالى له اذهب فادخل الجنة. So he says to him, go, enter paradise. قال فيأتيها فيخيل إليه أنها ملأ. So he says that he goes back to it and he perceives it again to be full. فيرجع فيقول يا رب. He goes back and he says, يا الله, my Lord, وجدتها ملأ. He says, I found it full. فيقول الله اذهب فادخل الجنة. He says, go back and enter the paradise. فَإِنَّ لَكَ مِثْلَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَشْرَةَ أَمْثَالِهَا. He says, go back to it. In it, there is for you and 10 times whatever was in this dunya. أو إِنَّ لَكَ أَشْرَةَ أَمْثَالِ الدُّنْيا, or it's similar to 10 of this world, of 10 of this dunya. قال فيقول أتسخر بي أو تضحك بي وأنت الملك. He says, over here, he says, Ya Allah. He's like, are you joking with me? Are you playing with me? He says, and you are the Lord of all worlds. Like, are you, like, I am so insignificant. I'm so small. Are you joking with me? Like, are you playing a joke on me? Are you laughing at me? قال لقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ضحك حتى بتأت نواجذه. He says that when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was saying this, he said that even he smiled. So even he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he smiled when he was narrating this. قال وكان يقال ذاك أدنى أهل الجنة منزلا, and it was said that this is the person who is the lowest level, or the lowest part of the paradise. But subhanAllah, yeah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enter us into his paradise. I mean, what's wrong, Omar? It was a nice hadith. قال وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وأبو كريب ولفظ لأبي كريب قال حدثنا أبو معاوية عن الأعمش عن إبراهيم عن عبيدة عن عبد الله قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So over here the same isnad on Ibn Mas'ud, where he says the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said إني لأعرف آخر أهل النار خروجا من النار. He says I know the last person to exit the hellfire رجل يخرج منها زحفا. So over here it says that he's exiting the hellfire. Zahfa is like it's like crawling on your stomach versus habu. Habu is like crawling on your knees. This is like more crawling on your stomach. فيقال له انطلق فادخل الجنة. Says that, you know, come out of the hellfire and go enter paradise. قال فيذهب فيدخل الجنة فيجد الناس قد أخذوا المنازل فيقال له تذكر الزمان الذي كنت فيه. So over here, this individual, he enters paradise and he finds that all of the places, like all the houses have been taken. So he goes in and he's like, he doesn't feel like there's anything left for him. And it says, and then it said to him, أتذكر الزمان الذي كنت فيه. It's like, do you remember, you know, your time on this world? فيقول نعم. He said, yeah, I remember it. فيقال له تمن. So it said to him, okay, hope for something or ask for something. فيتمنى, so he hopes. فيقال له لك الذي تمنيت وأشرة أضعاف الدنيا. It says, so you get whatever you imagined and 10 times of whatever was in this world. قال فيقول أتسخر بي وأنت الملك. He says, like, are you joking with me? Ya Allah, and you are the Lord of all worlds. قال فلقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ضحك حتى بدت نواجذه. And it's like, I saw the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم laugh or smile until his nawajid are the molars, but over here it means the canines. So like he صلى الله عليه وسلم smiled. قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا عفان بن مسلم قال حدثنا حماد بن سلمة قال حدثنا ثابت عن أنس أن ابن مسعود أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال. So over here you have Ibn Mas'ud again. He's saying that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said آخر من يدخل الجنة رجل فهو يمشي مرة ويكبو مرة. So it's like the last person to enter paradise, that he's going to be walking and he's going to be crawling and he out of his way, you know, getting out of the hellfire. وتسفعه النار مرة, and the hellfire will pull him back and it'll continue to burn him. فإذا ما جاوزها التفت إليها. And he says that every time he would pass by the fire as he was crawling out, it would burn him. فقال تبارك الذي نجاني منك. He says that all praise to the one that gave me or saved me from you, and he's talking to the hellfire. لقد أعطاني الله شيئا ما أعطاه أحدا من الأولين والآخرين. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me something that he has not given to anyone before me, nor will he give to anyone after me. فترفع له شجرة. So then a tree will be brought forth to him, or a tree will come out of the ground at that point. فيقول أي ربي. He says, oh my Lord, أدنني من هذه الشجرة فلأستظل بظلها وأشرب من مائها. He says, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings forth this tree. So he asks Allah, bring me closer to this tree. You know, allow me to get closer to this tree so that I can sit in its shade and drink from the water that's near it. فيقول الله عز وجل يا ابن آدم. He says, oh son of Adam, لعلي إن أعطيتك سألتني غيرها. So he says, if I give this to you, you're not going to ask me anything after this. فيقول لا. He says, okay, I will not. No, I won't. لا يا رب. He says, Ya Allah, or my Lord, I will not. ويعاهده أن لا يسأله غيرها. So he promises him that he will not ask other than that. وربه يعذره, and his Lord excuses him. لأنه يرى ما لا صبر له عليه, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that he saw something that he couldn't be patient on. Like, this is something that he really wanted. فيدنيه منها. So he will bring him closer to the tree. فيستظل بظلالها ويشرب من مائها. So that he sits in its shade and he drinks from its water. ثم ترفع له شجرة هي أحسن من الأولى. So then another tree will be made that's more beautiful or nicer than the first one. فيقول أي رب. So then he says, my Lord, أدني من هذه الأشرب من مائها واستظل بظلامها لا أسألك غيرها. He says, yeah, oh my Lord, bring me closer to this tree so that I can take from its shade and I can drink from its water, and I promise I'm not going to ask for anything else. فيقول يا ابن آدم. He says, oh son of Adam. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to him. ألم تعاهدني أن لا تسألني غيرها. Like, didn't you not promise me that you weren't going to ask me anything else? فيقول لعلي إن أدنيتك منها تسألني غيرها فيعاهد أن لا يسأل غيرها. So he says that if you give me this, like if you give me this now, I promise I'm not going to ask for anything else. Right? This is going to be the last time I'm going to ask. وَرَبُّهُ يَعْذِرُهُ. So Allah, his Lord, then excuses him. لأنه يرى ما لا صبر له عليه فيدنيه منها. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that he doesn't have the patience for it, so he goes and he brings him near to this tree. فيستظل بظلها ويشرب من مائها. So he benefits from its shade and he drinks from its water. ثم ترفع له شجرة عند باب الجنة هي أحسن من الأولين. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings another tree forward that's closer to the door of paradise now. And that's even more beautiful than the previous two trees. فيقول أي رب. He says, oh my Lord, أدنني من هذه أستظل بظلها وأشرب من مائها. It's like, yeah, Allah, allow me to benefit from that tree over there. Let me just get closer and let me get that tree so I can benefit from its shade and drink from its water. لا أسألك غيرها. And I promise I'm not going to ask anything else. فيقول يا ابن آدم. So then Allah says to him, is like, oh son of Adam, ألم تعاهدني ألا تسألني غيرها? It's like, didn't you promise me that you weren't going to ask for anything else? قال بلى. He's like, absolutely. That is what I promised, Ya Rabb, my Lord. هذه لا أسألك غيرها. It's like, after this, I'm not going to ask you anything. Just let me get this. وربه يعذره. So then, and his Lord excuses him. لأنه يرى ما لا صبر له عليه, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that he wouldn't have the patience. Like after seeing that tree, he knew that he wouldn't have patience. فيدنيه منها, so he brings him closer to it. فإذا أدناه منها, and when he is there and when he's brought near it, فيسمع أصوات أهل الجنة. Then he hears the people in paradise talking, right? Because he's closer now, and he actually hears the people in paradise speaking. فيقول أي رب, and he says, oh my Lord, أدخلني. It's like just let me in. Like, can I just get in? فيقول يا ابن آدم ما يصغيني منك. Is like, will you not? Are you not happy with what I've given you? أيرضيك أن أعطيك الدنيا ومثلها معه. He's like, what if I gave you this world and double? Like, what if I give you double this world? Everything that you had in this world, and I give you double, or everything in this world, and I give you double that. قال أي رب أستهزي بني. He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, my Lord. Are you making fun of me? Are you joking with me right now? وأنت رب العالمين, and you're the Lord of all people. فضحك Ibn Mas'ud, and over here at this point, Ibn Mas'ud, who narrates the hadith, he said that Ibn Mas'ud, he laughed or he smiled. فقال ألا تسألوني مما أضحك. He's like, are you not going to ask me what's making me laugh or what's making me smile? فقالوا مما تضحك. He's like, what is making you laugh? قال هكذا ضحك رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says, it is like this that the Messenger of Allah, he smiled when he was narrating and he was telling us this. فقالوا مما تضحك يا رسول الله. And we asked him, what is it that makes you smile? What is it that makes you laugh? يا رسول الله. قال من ضحك رب العالمين حين قال استهزي مني وأنت رب العالمين. It's like, he said that I'm laughing at the same reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was smiling or laughing at the slave when he asked him and he said to him that are you joking with me, or are you making fun of me, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you are the Lord of all people? فيقول إني لا أستهزي منك. He's like, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to him saying, I'm not joking, I'm not making fun of you. ولكني على ما أشاء قادر. And it's like, but I am capable of anything and everything. And we'll stop here. والله أعلم وصلى الله على خير خلق نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Inshallah, we'll have the إحياء علوم الدين class in about 10 minutes or so. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Oh, also, for those of you that didn't receive the announcement, tomorrow, inshallah, will be the first of Dhul Hijjah. Tomorrow will be the first of Dhul Hijjah, and the Eid, inshallah, will be on Sunday, June 16th.